Hello guys, I hope everyone is doing good. So I'm going to answer um the assignment given on Google Classroom. So I hope you guys watch the volume concerning density and how to solve for the density. So basically, what I want you to remember is this especially the triangle, how it works, and the formula for density, which is equal to mass over volume. You don't need these two because when you understand this, you can derive all the three. So when you're looking for density, you put your hand on density and you find out that now you have mass over volume. That's mass over volume. Now you're looking for mass, you're gonna put your hand on mass and then you have a density times volume. Now if you're looking for volume, you just put your hand on volume and then you have mass over volume. So that those are the formula. We are going to use this formula to solve the 10 questions. So the first question says a block of aluminium occupies a volume of 15.0 milliliter and weighs 40.5. What is the density? Now the volume, as you can see, the volume is 15 milliliter. The mass is 40.5. Then the density is going to be mass over volume. We're using this formula. So 40.5 divided by 15 is 2.7. That's the density. Got it? That's the density. So simple, mass over volume. Now let's solve number 2. Number 2 says a mercury metal is poured into a graduated cylinder that holds exactly 22.5 milliliter. The 22.5 milliliter is representing the volume. Why? Because of this sign over here. Now the mercury used to fill the cylinder weighs 306 gram. 306 gram, that is the mass. Now they're asking us to find density. So we're still going to do the same thing, right? The density is mass over volume, 306 divided by 22.5. So when you divide it, you put inside your calculator, you're going to get 13.6. Now let's solve number 3, right? Now number 3 says what is the weight of the ethyl alcohol that exactly fills a 200 milliliter container, right? The density of the ethyl alcohol is 0.789 gram per milliliter. So here, this question, they have given us the volume and they have given us the density. They say the density, right? They have given us the density. Now, what are they asking you to find? The weight. Now, the weight of something is also the mass of something, right? So that's basically they're asking us to find the mass. So we know the volume, we don't know the mass, but we know the density. Now, how do we solve that? Now, if you can refer to the first thing I was telling you guys, if you look at the question, if you're really looking for the mass, what do? You put your hand on mass, D times V. So we multiplying the density times the volume. Now, what is the density? 0.789 times the volume, which is 200. So you multiply them and you get 157.8. Right? You do that with your calculator. Good. Now, let's go ahead and solve number 4, right? Number 4. So number 4 is asking us to find let's say a rectangular block of copper metal weight 1896 gram. Dimension of the block are 8.4 centimeter by 5.5 centimeter by 4.6 centimeter. From this data, what is the density of the copper? Now, this question is weird, right? Because we have a lot of things. We are just expecting 2 things, right? Whenever they ask you for density, the normal thing is, they'll give you volume, they'll give you mass, and then you divide them, and then you find your volume, right? But this case, they have given you the mass, right? And you need a volume to calculate the density. We all know we're looking for the density, right? So you need the volume, because from the formula you have the mass, which is 1896. Agree? Do you know the volume? There's a lot of complicated 3 numbers over there. Instead of them giving us the volume, they give us 8.4, 5.5, 4.6. That's not the volume. But The density, that's what we're asking for. That's what they're asking us. They didn't ask us for volume, but they asked us for density. So we need to find the volume. Now, the dimension of the block are 8.4 by 5.5 by 4.6. This tells you that they are talking about a rectangular box. So a rectangular block is a shape of is everybody knows what is a rectangular box, right? A rectangular box, how it looks, right? So they're asking us to find the volume of a rectangular box. So the formula for the volume of a rectangular box is length times width times height. I hope we did it yesterday. So that's how to find the volume. So you just multiply 8.4 times 5.5 times 4.6, and then you get a volume, 212.52. When you multiply it, you get a volume. But this is not your final answer. Why? Because they didn't ask you to find the volume. They ask you to find the density. So you want to make sure now that you have your data that is complete, you have your mass, and now you have your volume. Now what do? You go back, density equals mass over volume, mass over volume. So 1896 divided by 212.52. When you divide it, you get 8.925, right? A lot of decimals, but 2 decimals is fine, right? Hope it's understood. Now let's move to number 5, right? So number 5 is asking us a flask that weighs 345.8 is filled with 225 milliliter of carbon tetraoxide. The weight of the flask and carbon tetraoxide is found to be 703.55 gram. From this information, calculate the density of carbon tetraoxide. Now they are asking us to calculate the density of carbon tetraoxide. They didn't ask us to find the density of the flask, the density of carbon tetraoxide. So carbon tetraoxide is a kind of a chemical, in a laboratory we deal with. So a flask that's weight 345.8 gram. That's the weight of the flask. It's not the weight of the carbon tetrachloride, right? The chemical is not 345. That's the weight of the flask. Now, the carbon tetrachloride is 225 milliliter. So this 225 milliliter is filled with 225. That means it's the volume, right? So the volume of the carbon tetrachloride is 225 milliliter. Now, the weight of the flask and the carbon tetrachloride is found to be 703.55 gram. Now, this is kind of being tricky because here they only give you the weight of the flask. They didn't give you the weight of the carbon tetrachloride because you need the weight of the carbon tetrachloride. You don't need the weight of the flask, right, for your density because they're asking you to find the density of carbon tetrachloride. Now, you're going to use the weight. Now, the empty flask, like when you put the flask, is just 345.8. Now, when they put this carbon tetrachloride inside the flask, they find out that the weight of the flask increases. Of course, when you have an empty bottle of water, empty bottle, and then you weight it, it's not gonna have a weight. And then when you pour water inside, the weight is gonna increase because it's gonna be more heavier. That's what is happening over here. The same weight of the flask, empty flask, is 345.8. Now, when they put the carbon tetrachloride inside, the weight has increased to 703.55. Well, it has increased, right? So now you need the mass from here. You need the mass of carbon tetrachloride. Now, to find the mass, you want to use the total mass, right? The total mass after you pour the carbon tetrachloride inside the flask, which is 755, and subtract it from the weight of the flask, right, at the beginning, right, which is 345. Then when you subtract it, you're going to get 357.75. You use your calculator and do that, right? No harm, right? And then now you have your mass, right? Because that's the mass of the carbon tetrachloride. that's the actual mass of the carbon tetrachloride. So density equals to mass over volume. Again, you take the mass and divide it by the volume, and then you get 1.59. Right? So you just have to be careful on this question. It's a scientific question, also a mathematical question that asks you to use common sense. Okay. So number 6. Number 6 says calculate the density of sulfuric acid if 335.4 millimeter of the acid weighs 65.14 gram. So basic problem, they're asking us for density, and we know the formula for density equals to mass over volume. So we know the volume, which is 35.4. We know the mass, which is 65.14, right? So to find the density is mass over volume. So we use mass divided by volume, and then we get this number, right? Hope it makes sense. Now let's move on to number 7. Okay, so number 7, let's look at number 7. So number 7 is asking us to find the mass of 250 milliliter of benzene, right? It's also like a chemical, and then they're asking us to find they said the density of benzene is 0.8765 gram per milliliter. So this question, if I can see it very well, we don't know the mass because they said find the mass. We don't know the mass. But for the volume is 250 milliliter, right? Is a sign for volume, milliliter, liter, and this shows that is the volume, right? And then they have given us the density is 0.8765, right? So to find the volume, you actually want to do the same to find the mass now. Now to find the mass, based on what I told you on how to solve the formulas for mass, right? You're going to use your triangle. If you're looking for mass is always, you put your hand over here, is D times V. So density times volume, right? So we go back to our problem and solve density times D times V. So where is the density? Density is 0.8765 times 250. When you multiply, you get 219.125 as the mass. Okay, now let's move to number 8. Let's move to number 8. Right, these are the last questions. All right, so a block of lead has dimension of 4.50 centimeter by 5.20 centimeter by 6.0 centimeter. So this is a similar question we solved earlier on, and then it's still asking the same thing, right? They give you the weight, and then they're asking to find the density. And to find the density, you need the mass and you need the volume, right? Now, have they given us the mass from the problem? Yes, they have given us the mass, which is 1587. Now you need the volume. Now they are asking us to find a block of lead. A block of lead has a dimension of, so whenever they have given you something by something by something, that means basically they're asking, this is the volume they have given you. So you want to multiply this as the way we did earlier. So the volume of that block is length times width times height. So you're gonna multiply everything, right? 4.50 times 5.20 times 6, right? Then when you multiply, you're going to get 140.4. You're gonna do that with your calculator, okay? So that's the volume. Now you know the volume, you know the mass, you know the volume. Now you can go ahead and find your density. So density is mass over volume. So the mass is 1587 divided by 140.4, which is the volume. So when you calculate that, you're going to get 11.30341. Okay, is the long decimal. I hope this is understood. Now let's go to number 9, right? Number 9, the most interesting question, right? So number 9 is also a scientific question. Basically, all these are scientific questions, right? So mass is equals to 28.5 gram, and then They said 28.5 gram of iron shot is added to a graduated cylinder containing 45.0 milliliter of water. The water level rises to the 49.10 milliliter mark. From this information, calculate the density of iron. Right? Is the same problem with the problem we solved earlier concerning the carbon tetrachloride, but this time it's kind of been different a little bit, right? So 28.5, we know that's the mass, right? No harm. 28.5 is the mass. Now, the volume, they have given us two things, right? They say milliliter, milliliter. We know these are the volume, but they're giving us two volume. We only need one, right? Why did they give us two volume? What they say is that they said we have a graduated cylinder that contains water. So I'm going to use a basic explanation on this. So let's say this is my cylinder, right? And then I have water inside. Based on the problem, the water is 45.50 milliliter. Let's say it's over here, right? So that's the 45.50. Now let's say this is our block, right? I want you guys to look at this as a block, right? It's not a lemon, it's a block, right? So they say they put the block inside the water, right? Oh yeah, look at what happened. The level of water rises from here. It was here, right? And then it rises. So it rises to what? 49.10. So let's say the level of the water increases from here to here. That means you want to calculate the volume from here to here. That's what you needed for your calculation, because the volume of the block I put is from here to here. That of the water is from here to here. That of the volume of the rock, right, or the stone that I put inside is from here to here. So you want to calculate it. So you want to use the total one and subtract it from the one that was inside. So the total is a 49.10 and subtract it from the one that is inside. So we have 49.10, which is the total one after you put the stone inside the iron, right? You put the iron inside the water is 49.10, and the water itself is 45.50. Then when you subtract it, you get 3.6, right? I hope it makes sense. So that's when you subtract it, you're going to get 3.6, which is now the volume, right? The volume is neither of the two, but you need to subtract it to get a volume, right? Hope this makes sense. So now you have your density, which is 28.5, and then you have your density, which is going to be 28.5 divided by 3.6, mass over volume. So the answer is going to be 7.9166, right? Still do that with your calculator. So what volume of silver metal will weigh exactly 2,500 gram? The density of silver is 10.5 gram per centimeter cube. So this is another scientific question, either physics or chemistry. Okay, so what volume? What does that mean? It means they're asking us to find the volume, right? They're asking us to find the volume. So based on what I was saying earlier about a volume, now to find the volume, it has its own formula, like the way we did it earlier, right? With a triangle. Now to find the volume, what do you need? You actually need the mass divided by density. So to find volume, you put your hand on volume. So we have mass over density, right? Makes sense. Mass over density. So we have we need mass over density. That's our that's what we're gonna use. So do we know the mass? The mass is the 2,500, right? And then the density they have given us is 10.5. So mass over density, mass over density, based on your formula, mass over density, right? So you do the formula by yourself, right? 2,500 divided by 10.5 is 238.0952. So this is the end of the questions. If you have any question, you can ask me in Google Classroom, email me, message me, or comment below. This is not professional, I know, but I'll try to make it more professional next time because I don't have enough resources to make it professional. Thank you. If you have any question, let me know. Bye.